What if you could reach back into time, not with a machine but with your mind, and surgically alter a moment from your past? An argument that still stings, a mistake that haunts your quiet hours, a missed opportunity that whispers, "What if?" in the corridors of your consciousness. What if changing that memory, that single thread in the tapestry of your history, could fundamentally transform the fabric of your life today? You carry within you a museum of regrets, don't you? Each display case holds a moment frozen in amber. The harsh words you spoke to someone you loved, the courage you couldn't summon when opportunity knocked, the decision that led you down a path you wish you'd never taken. These moments don't just live in your past, they colonize your present, spreading their influence like shadows across every new day. You've been told these shadows are permanent, that the past is an immutable fact, carved in the stone of time itself. But here's where the ancient wisdom meets the revolutionary truth. Most people live as prisoners of their own history, believing the past is set in stone, accepting their memories as unchangeable verdicts passed down by the court of time. They wake each morning in cells built from yesterday's pain, never realizing they hold the key. But Neville Goddard, a mystic who understood the architecture of consciousness itself, taught something radically different. The past is not a fact, it's a memory. And a memory, like any creation of consciousness, can be reshaped, reformed, rewritten. This is not about denial or delusion. This is about understanding a fundamental principle of reality that has been hidden in plain sight. The promise here is nothing less than liberation, the power to prune the dead branches of your past so that the tree of your life can flourish in the eternal now. You're about to discover that you have been the unconscious author of your suffering, continuously recreating your pain through the act of remembering. But once you understand this mechanism, you become the conscious editor of your experience, capable of revising not just how you feel about your past, but the very structure of your present reality. Neville Goddard was not merely another spiritual teacher offering platitudes about positive thinking. He was a master mystic who understood the mechanics of consciousness with surgical precision, and he gave humanity one of its most potent psychological tools, a technique so powerful that those who master it report changes not just in their inner world, but in their outer circumstances as well. This technique challenges everything you've been taught about the nature of time, memory, and causation. It suggests that the past is not behind you, but within you, alive and malleable in the workshop of your imagination. In the next 12 minutes, you will learn the step-by-step method of revision, a technique to rewrite your past, and in doing so, transform your present. This is not metaphorical. This is a practical, applicable method that you can begin using tonight. You will understand not just what to do, but why it works, how it aligns with both ancient wisdom and modern neuroscience, and most importantly, how to avoid the fatal mistakes that cause 90% of people to fail with this technique. Yes, there is one particular error, so common yet so devastating, that I will reveal in Part 4, an error that turns this powerful tool into an exercise in futility. Before we begin this journey into the malleable nature of time and memory, I invite you to become part of this community of seekers. Subscribe to this channel, activate the notification bell, and in the comments below, share with us one event from your past that you wish you could change. Don't worry about being specific. Even a simple phrase will do. This act of acknowledgement is your first step toward freedom from the tyranny of what was, and your entrance into the sovereignty of what can be. The principle behind revision rests on a truth so simple that the mind initially rebels against it. The only place your past exists is in your imagination right now. Think about this carefully. Where is yesterday? Can you touch it? Can you visit it? The answer reveals itself when you realize that what you call the past is nothing more than a present mental activity, a story you are telling yourself in this moment. The event itself has dissolved into the void. What remains is your reconstruction of it, playing like a film in the theater of your mind. Every time you remember, you are not accessing some objective recording. You are actively recreating the experience through the faculty of imagination. This is where Neville's genius becomes apparent. He recognized that if the past only exists as a present mental activity, then the negative feeling you experience from a past event is not caused by the event itself, which no longer exists, but by your continuous reimagining, your re-feeling of it in the present moment. You are not suffering from what happened, you are suffering from what you are imagining happened. This distinction is not semantic, it is revolutionary. It means that every moment of pain from your past is actually a present creation, sustained only by your unconscious choice to keep recreating it in the same form. Consider how many times you've replayed that painful memory. Each replay is not a passive viewing, but an active creation. You are the director, the actors, the audience, and the projectionist. You supply the emotions, the interpretations, the meaning. Without your present participation, that past event has no power whatsoever. It cannot reach through time to hurt you. You must reach back through imagination to hurt yourself. This is not a cruel joke of consciousness. It is actually your salvation, because what you have the power to create, you have the power to revise. The mechanism is astonishingly elegant. Since your subconscious mind, which Neville identified as the creative power within you, cannot distinguish between a memory of a physical experience and a memory of an imagined experience, both carry equal weight in shaping your present state of consciousness. Your subconscious doesn't fact-check against some cosmic record of what really happened. It only knows what you feed it through the faculty of imagination. This is why two people can experience the same event and carry completely different memories of it, each memory creating a different present reality for its holder. Revision, then, is not about lying to yourself or engaging in wishful thinking. It is about consciously choosing which version of the past you will use as the foundation for your present experience. It is about recognizing that you are already engaged in an act of creation every time you remember, and deciding to create something that serves rather than enslaves you. You are not changing what happened. That's impossible because what happened doesn't exist anywhere except in consciousness. You are changing what you are imagining happened, which is the only thing that ever existed in the first place. This is why people who successfully practice revision often report that not only do they feel different about past events, but their present circumstances begin to shift in ways that seem causally connected to their revised memories. A woman who revises a history of rejection begins to find herself surrounded by acceptance. A man who revises past failures discovers new opportunities for success. It's as if the revised past creates a new trajectory through time, proving that the past and present are not separate phenomena, but different aspects of one continuous creation happening in consciousness. The beauty of this understanding is that it places you at the cause, not the effect of your experience. You are not revising the past to escape from reality. You are revising it to create reality. Every memory you hold is a seed that grows into present experience. When you change the seed through revision, you change the fruit it bears. This is not magic. This is the law of consciousness, as reliable and predictable as any physical law once you understand its operation. But understanding is only the beginning. The real power comes from application, from the actual practice of revision, and like any powerful tool, it must be used correctly to be effective. There is a precise method, a specific state of consciousness required, and particular pitfalls to avoid. The subconscious mind, which is the operative power in this process, responds not to force or desperation, but to feeling and acceptance. You cannot revise from a state of anger at the past. You must revise from a state of loving authority over your own consciousness. This brings us to a crucial point that Neville emphasized repeatedly. You are not fighting against the past when you revise. You are not at war with your memories. You are simply choosing, with the authority of the author, to write a better story. The old story served its purpose. Perhaps it taught you something. Perhaps it brought you to this moment of understanding. But now it's time to let it go, not with violence, but with gratitude, and replace it with something that aligns with who you are becoming rather than who you were. The implications of this are staggering. It means that no mistake is final, no failure is permanent, no regret need be carried forever. It means that the you who exists right now has complete authority over the meaning and influence of everything that has ever happened to you. You are not rewriting history in some objective sense. History doesn't exist in an objective sense. You are rewriting the only history that matters, the one that lives in your consciousness and shapes your experience of the present moment. Think of your consciousness as a garden. Every memory is a plant growing in that garden, some bearing beautiful flowers, others growing as weeds that choke out new growth. Revision is the gardener's tool that allows you to uproot the weeds and plant flowers in their place. The soil doesn't care what was there before, it only responds to what is planted now. Your subconscious mind is that soil, infinitely fertile, ready to grow whatever seeds of memory you choose to plant through the act of revision. This is not a technique for the faint-hearted or the casual experimenter. It requires a complete reorientation of how you understand time, memory, and causation. It asks you to take responsibility, not just for your present choices, but for your past experiences, not in the sense that you caused them, but in the sense that you are choosing how they continue to exist in your consciousness. It is the ultimate act of personal sovereignty, declaring that nothing, not even the past, has power over you except the power you give it through your own imagination. Neville Goddard's most profound insight was his recognition that God is not some external deity pulling cosmic strings, but rather our own wonderful human imagination. This is not blasphemy or metaphor. It is the recognition of the creative principle that operates within every human being. When you imagine, you are exercising the same power that creates worlds, the same force that transforms potential into actuality. Your imagination is not just a mental faculty for daydreaming, it is the God power within you, the creator of your experienced reality. And if imagination is God, then what you imagine, including your memories, becomes your lived truth. This understanding completely reframes the nature of memory and its relationship to reality. If imagination creates reality, then the memory you hold in imagination is the reality you are sustaining. You are not remembering an objective past. You are imagining a subjective past, and that imagined past is creating your objective present. Every time you recall that painful event, you are not just remembering, you are recreating, reinforcing, and re-energizing that pattern in your consciousness. You are quite literally resurrecting the dead, bringing what has passed back into living influence through the divine power of imagination. Consider this carefully. Your past is like a movie script you keep reading, and every time you read it, you bring its reality into the present moment. As long as you read the tragic scene, you will feel the tragedy. As long as you rehearse the failure, you will embody the failure. The script itself has no power. The power lies in your reading of it, your imagining of it, your feeling of it. Revision is simply picking up the pen, crossing out the old lines, and writing a new scene that serves your highest good. You are not changing what happened. You are changing what you are continuously creating through the act of remembering. This is where logic meets mysticism in perfect harmony. If consciousness is the only reality, as both ancient wisdom and quantum physics suggest, then what exists in consciousness is more real than what existed in time. The event that happened 10 years ago has no existence except in consciousness. The building you walked past this morning has no existence for you except in consciousness. Everything you know, everything you've experienced, everything that shapes your sense of self and world exists only in consciousness. Therefore, to change consciousness is to change reality at its most fundamental level. The logic becomes even more compelling when you consider the nature of influence. How does a past event influence your present? Not through some mechanical causation stretching through time, but through your present consciousness of it. A past failure only makes you fearful of future attempts because you hold it in consciousness as a living reality. A past betrayal only makes you distrustful because you keep it alive through imagination. The past has no arms to reach through time and grab you. You must reach back through memory and bring it forward. And if you must bring it forward anyway, why not bring forward a version that empowers rather than diminishes you? Here's an analogy that crystallizes this understanding. Imagine your consciousness as a vast library, and each memory as a book on the shelf. Most people believe these books are historical documents, unchangeable records of what was. But Neville revealed that you are not just the librarian, you are also the author. These are not history books. They are novels you've written and continue to edit. Every time you pull a book from the shelf and read it, you have the opportunity to revise it, to write a better chapter, to change the ending. The other people in your life will respond not to the original version, which exists nowhere but in your imagination, but to the revised version you now hold in consciousness. This brings us to a crucial understanding about the nature of truth in consciousness. Truth is not about historical accuracy, it's about creative power. The true past is not the one that would be recorded by some omniscient observer. No such recording exists. The true past is the one that creates the best present, the one that aligns with your highest vision of yourself, the one that generates love rather than fear, expansion rather than contraction. This is not delusion. This is conscious creation. You are not deceiving yourself about what happened. You are choosing what you will create from what happened. The unshakable logic continues. If you accept that your imagination is creative, and if you accept that your memories exist only in imagination, then it follows with mathematical certainty that revising your memories must influence your reality. This is not wishful thinking. It is the logical conclusion of observable premises. Every thought you think, every memory you entertain, every scene you imagine, is a creative act that shapes your experience. Revision simply makes this creative process conscious and deliberate rather than unconscious and habitual. Consider how this principle already operates in your life without your conscious participation. Haven't you noticed how a memory can change over time? How something that once seemed terrible can become a funny story? How a painful experience can transform into a source of strength? This natural revision happens randomly and unconsciously. What Neville offers is the ability to direct this process consciously, to become the deliberate artist of your own past rather than its unconscious victim. The implications ripple outward in all directions. If you can revise your personal past, what about your family history, your cultural narrative, your human story? Not in the sense of denying historical facts, but in the sense of choosing which aspects of the past you will energize with your imagination. You can't change what happened to your ancestors, but you can change how their story lives in you. You can't change historical events, but you can change how they shape your present consciousness. This is not about rewriting history books. It's about rewriting the living influence of history in your own being. This logic extends even to your future, because your future is largely determined by your past, not by what happened, but by what you remember happening. The person who remembers a past full of success and support will approach the future differently than the person who remembers failure and abandonment. By revising your past, you are simultaneously revising your future, because you are changing the foundation upon which that future is being built. The revised past becomes a new launching pad for possibilities that were impossible from the platform of the original memory. The final piece of this logical framework is the understanding that resistance to this idea is itself proof of its validity. Why would you resist changing a memory if memories were just inert records? You resist because you intuitively know that memories are alive, that they have creative power, that to change them is to change something fundamental about your reality. Your very resistance reveals that you already believe in the power of memory to shape experience. Revision simply asks you to use that power consciously rather than being used by it unconsciously. The mental preparation for revision requires you to approach this practice not as a desperate attempt to escape your past, but as a sacred act of conscious creation. This technique is best performed at the end of your day, when the bustling noise of the external world has quieted and you can turn your attention inward with the focus of a master craftsman approaching their work. The ideal state is one of relaxed contemplation, like a film director reviewing the day's footage, not with harsh criticism, but with the eye of an artist who knows that every scene can be improved in the editing room. You are not sitting in judgment of your past. You are sitting in the director's chair of your consciousness. The required mindset is crucial to understand, for it determines whether revision becomes a tool of transformation or an exercise in frustration. You must approach this practice not from a place of anger at what was or regret for what wasn't, but from the position of a wise and loving editor who understands that every story can be improved. Imagine yourself as a benevolent God reviewing the day's creation, not with the intention to punish or condemn, but with the desire to perfect and beautify. You are not fighting against your past, you are loving it into a new form. This distinction is not merely philosophical, it is operational. The subconscious mind, which is the operative power in revision, responds to the feeling tone of your approach. Think of yourself as a gardener who has discovered weeds in their garden. You don't attack the weeds with hatred, you simply recognize that they don't belong in the garden you're creating, and you remove them with calm purpose, immediately planting something beautiful in their place. This emotional stance is critical because revision works through the law of assumption. What you assume to be true with feeling becomes true in experience. If you approach revision with desperation, you are assuming the past has power over you. If you approach it with calm authority, you are assuming you have power over the past. The preparation begins before you even close your eyes. Create a physical space that supports this inner work. Dim the lights, silence your devices. Perhaps light a candle, not because these things have magical power, but because they signal to your consciousness that you are entering a different state, a creative state, where the normal rules of time and memory become fluid. You are creating a ritual container for transformation, a sacred space where the ordinary you steps aside and the divine creator within you takes the helm. Your breathing becomes your bridge from the external to the internal. Take several deep breaths, not forced or mechanical, but natural and flowing, like waves washing the shore of your consciousness clean. With each exhale, release the tensions and concerns of the day. With each inhale, draw in the peace and power of your creative imagination. You are not trying to achieve some special state. You are simply returning to your natural state of creative authority, the state from which all revision becomes possible. As you settle into this state, remind yourself of what you are about to do. You are not about to engage in fantasy or self-deception. You are about to exercise your divine right as the author of your own experience. Every memory you hold is a story you are telling yourself, and you have the absolute right to edit that story. This is not about denying what happened, it is about choosing what lives. The event is gone, only the memory remains, and the memory belongs to you, not you to it. The emotional quality you bring to this practice is perhaps its most important element. You must approach revision with the same feeling you would bring to any creative act, with joy, with anticipation, with the pleasure of an artist about to improve their masterpiece. If you find yourself feeling heavy or burdened as you approach this practice, pause and readjust your emotional stance. Remember, you are not going to war with your past. You are going to dance with it, to transform it through the alchemy of imagination into something that serves your highest good. This preparation phase is also about establishing your authority. You must know, not just intellectually but in the depths of your being, that you have the right and the power to revise. This authority doesn't come from any external source. It comes from the recognition of what you are, a center of consciousness with the divine power to imagine and therefore to create. Every human being has this authority, but most never claim it. They live as subjects of their memories rather than as sovereigns over them. In this moment of preparation, you are claiming your throne. Consider the state of consciousness you enter when you're about to fall asleep, that twilight realm where the critical faculty relaxes and the imagination becomes more vivid and powerful. This is the ideal state for revision, what Neville called the state akin to sleep. In this state, the conscious mind's habitual patterns of thought loosen their grip, and the subconscious becomes more receptive to new impressions. You're not trying to force yourself into this state. You're allowing yourself to drift naturally toward it, maintaining just enough awareness to direct the process of revision. The preparation also involves a clearing of intention. You must be clear about why you are revising. Is it to punish someone who hurt you? Is it to prove something to yourself or others? These motivations will sabotage the practice. The only pure intention for revision is to align your consciousness with your highest good, to transform memories that create limitation into memories that create expansion. You are not revising to get revenge or to win. You are revising to free yourself from the prison of a past that no longer serves you. As you prepare, you might encounter resistance. A voice might say, "But that's not what really happened," or "This is just make-believe." Acknowledge these voices without fighting them. They are the guardians of the old order, trying to maintain the status quo of your consciousness. Simply remind them that what really happened exists nowhere except in imagination, and you are choosing to imagine something better. This is not make-believe. This is conscious creation, the highest use of the divine faculty of imagination. The physical relaxation of your body is also part of this preparation. Tension in the body reflects tension in consciousness, and revision requires a fluid, flexible state of mind. Starting from your feet and moving upward, consciously relax each part of your body. As you do, imagine that you are also relaxing your grip on the past, loosening the tight hold of old memories, making space for new creation. Your body becomes a temple of transformation, relaxed and receptive to the new story you are about to write in consciousness. Remember that this preparation is not a race. Take whatever time you need to reach the proper state. Some nights it might take just a few minutes, other nights it might take longer. The important thing is not speed, but quality of consciousness. You are preparing to perform sacred work, the work of conscious creation, and such work deserves whatever time and attention it requires. When you feel that shift, that subtle but unmistakable sense that you have moved from ordinary consciousness into the creative state, you know you are ready to begin the actual practice of revision. This state of preparation becomes easier with practice. Eventually, you will be able to shift into the proper state almost instantly, like a musician who can pick up their instrument and immediately enter the flow of music. But in the beginning, give yourself the gift of thorough preparation. The quality of your revision will reflect the quality of your preparation, just as the quality of a painting reflects the care with which the artist prepares their canvas. The final element of preparation is gratitude. Gratitude for the power of imagination, gratitude for the opportunity to revise, gratitude even for the painful memories that have brought you to this moment of transformation. This gratitude is not forced or false. It arises naturally when you realize that every experience, even the painful ones, has contributed to your growth. Now you are ready to consciously direct that growth, to become the deliberate creator of your own story. From this state of prepared consciousness, the actual practice of revision can begin. Now we enter the sacred mechanics of revision, the precise steps that transform memory from prison to paradise. Begin by mentally reviewing the events of your day in reverse order, starting from this very moment and moving backward through time like a film running in reverse. This reverse review serves a profound purpose. It breaks the habitual forward momentum of thought, the automatic way your mind usually processes experience. By moving backward, you become the observer rather than the participant, gaining the detachment necessary for effective revision. Watch the day's events flow past your mind's eye without judgment, without commentary, simply observing like a neutral witness to your own experience. As you conduct this reverse review, you're not looking for major traumas or life-changing events, though those can certainly be revised. You're looking for any moment, no matter how small, that left a negative residue in your consciousness. Perhaps it was a sharp word spoken in traffic, an awkward interaction at work, a moment of self-doubt when you looked in the mirror. These seemingly minor moments are like small tears in the fabric of your consciousness, and if left unrevised, they accumulate into the heavy cloak of regret and limitation that so many wear without realizing it. Your reviewing consciousness becomes like a skilled editor, noting which scenes need to be reshot. When you identify an event you wish had gone differently, pause your reverse review and bring that specific scene into sharp focus. See it clearly in your imagination, the setting, the people involved, the words spoken, the feelings felt. Don't shy away from the discomfort of the original scene. You need to see it clearly in order to revise it effectively. This is like a surgeon who must first clearly see the wound before they can heal it. Hold the scene steady in your mind's eye, acknowledging it without resistance, without trying to push it away or pretend it didn't happen. This acknowledgement is important. You're not denying the original experience, you're preparing to transform it. Now comes the creative act itself. In your imagination, construct the ideal version of that event. This is not about creating a fantasy where you become superhuman or where impossible things happen. This is about imagining the scene as you deeply wish it had unfolded, within the realm of what could have been possible. If you had an argument with your partner, don't imagine them suddenly becoming a different person. Imagine yourself responding with the wisdom and love you wish you had accessed in that moment. See yourself speaking the words you wish you had spoken, taking the actions you wish you had taken, embodying the state of consciousness you wish you had occupied. The construction of this revised scene requires artistic precision. You're not just changing the outcome, you're changing the entire quality of the event. If the original scene was characterized by anger, the revised scene should be characterized by understanding. If the original was marked by failure, the revised version should be marked by success. But here's the crucial point. The success shouldn't feel forced or unrealistic. It should feel like the natural outcome of you being in a better state of consciousness. You're not imagining winning the lottery when you originally lost $1. You're imagining yourself handling whatever situation arose with grace, wisdom, and power. Don't just change the external events, change your internal state within the scene. This is perhaps the most important aspect of revision. See yourself in the revised scene as calm, confident, loving, whatever quality was missing in the original. Feel yourself embodying these qualities, not as a pretense, but as your natural state. This internal revision is what creates the real transformation, because it's not really about what happened to you. It's about who you were being when it happened. When you revise who you were being, you revise the entire quality of the experience and its ongoing influence in your life. Now you must bring this revised scene to life through sensory vividness. What did you see in the revised version? Make the colors bright and clear. What did you hear? Perhaps your own voice, speaking with confidence, or another person responding with kindness. What did you physically feel? The firm handshake of reconciliation, the warmth of an embrace, the satisfaction of completion. The more sensory detail you can include, the more real the revised scene becomes to your subconscious mind, which thinks in images and feelings rather than abstract concepts. You're not just thinking about a better scene, you're experiencing it with the full power of imagination. The next step is crucial and often overlooked. Replay the revised scene in a short loop in your mind's eye. Don't just imagine it once and move on. Loop it like a brief video clip, perhaps just the key moment of transformation, playing it over and over until it begins to feel familiar, until it feels more like a memory than an imagination. This repetition is what impresses the new version upon your subconscious mind. Each replay deepens the groove of the new memory, like water flowing repeatedly along a path until it creates a new riverbed. The old memory hasn't been destroyed. It's been overwritten by something more powerful, a consciously created alternative. But sensory detail alone is not enough. You must feel the emotions of the revised scene. This is the secret fire that brings revision to life. Feel the relief of the conflict resolved, the joy of the success achieved, the peace of the understanding reached. These feelings are not just accompaniments to the revised scene, they are its creative power. The subconscious mind responds not to images alone, but to images mixed with feeling. When you feel the reality of the revised scene, you're speaking the language the subconscious understands, the language of emotional truth. Let these feelings wash through you, replacing the original emotional residue with something that uplifts rather than depletes you. Continue this feeling until the revised memory feels more real than the original. This is the tipping point of revision, the moment when the new version becomes the dominant reality in your consciousness. You'll know you've reached this point when thinking of the situation naturally brings up the revised version first, when the emotional charge of the original has been neutralized and replaced with the feeling tone of your revision. This might happen quickly for small events, or it might require multiple sessions for more significant memories. Be patient with the process. You're rewiring patterns that may have been reinforced for years. The key is to reach a point of satisfaction where the revised scene feels complete and you feel genuinely good about it. You're not trying to convince yourself of something untrue. You're creating a new truth in consciousness, a truth that serves your highest good. When you feel this satisfaction, This sense of, yes, that's how it should have been. That's how it now is in my consciousness. You've completed the revision of that particular event. The old version hasn't been destroyed. Nothing in consciousness is ever destroyed, but it has been deactivated, replaced by something that generates power rather than pain. After you have successfully felt the reality of the revised scene, there's a final, critical step. Drop it completely. This might seem counterintuitive after all the work you've just done, but it's essential. Once you've planted a seed, you don't keep digging it up to see if it's growing. Once you've revised the memory, you must release it, trusting that the work has been done. Go to sleep in the feeling of peace and satisfaction, not in the feeling of trying to make something happen. The revision is complete. Now let it work its magic in the depths of your consciousness without your conscious interference. If the old memory tries to surface in the coming days, and it likely will as old patterns have momentum, don't fight it or become discouraged. Fighting it only gives it energy. Instead, simply acknowledge it and gently replace it with your revised version. Say to yourself, either silently or aloud, "That's not how it happened, this is how it happened," and briefly recall the feeling of the revised scene. Don't make a big production of it. Just gently, firmly insist on the new version. Over time, the old memory will lose its charge and its tendency to arise, while the revised version becomes your natural recall of the event. This process might need to be repeated for particularly stubborn memories. Some memories have been reinforced so many times that they require multiple revisions to fully transform. This is not a failure of the technique. It's simply the nature of working with deeply grooved patterns. Each revision weakens the old pattern and strengthens the new one. Be persistent but gentle, like water wearing away stone, not through force but through consistent, patient application. Eventually, even the most painful memory can be transformed into something that serves rather than enslaves you. Remember, you're not just changing a memory, you're changing a living influence in your consciousness. Every memory is like a program running in the background of your mind, influencing your thoughts, feelings, and actions in ways you might not even realize. When you revise a memory, you're rewriting that program, changing its output from limitation to liberation. This is why people often report that after successfully revising a memory, not only do they feel different about the past, but their present circumstances begin to shift in related ways. The revised memory creates a new pattern that attracts corresponding experiences. The first fatal mistake that nullifies the power of revision is attempting to revise from a state of force, anger, or desperation. This is perhaps the most common error, born from a fundamental misunderstanding of how consciousness operates. When you approach revision with force, you're essentially declaring war on your past, and war consciousness creates more conflict, not resolution. The person who sits down to revise while seething with anger at someone who wronged them is not revising. They're reinforcing the very emotional pattern they're trying to escape. The subconscious mind doesn't respond to force, it responds to feeling, and the feeling of force is the feeling of resistance, which only strengthens what you're resisting. Think of it this way. When you revise from anger, you're not really revising the event, you're replaying it with a vengeful twist. You might imagine yourself winning the argument or getting revenge. But this isn't true revision, it's just another form of conflict consciousness. The emotional signature remains the same: discord, separation, attack, and defense. You're not transforming the memory, you're militarizing it. The subconscious mind, which cannot distinguish between the emotional quality of experiences, simply receives more of the same negative charge, even if the imagined outcome seems positive on the surface. You must revise from a place of calm, loving control as a creator, not as a warrior. The desperation error is equally destructive. When you approach revision from desperation, "This has to work, I need this to change, I can't live with this memory anymore," you're affirming the power of the original memory over you. Desperation is the consciousness of lack, of insufficiency, of being at the mercy of circumstances. When you revise from this state, you're not exercising your divine authority as the creator of your experience. You're begging for mercy from your own creation. The subconscious reads this desperation as confirmation that the original memory is indeed powerful and threatening, and it responds by maintaining the pattern you're desperately trying to change. The second fatal mistake is what Neville called passionless imagining, going through the motions of revision without genuine feeling. This is the error of the intellectual who understands the concept but doesn't embody the practice. They sit down and think about a revised scene, perhaps even visualizing it clearly, but without any emotional investment. They treat revision like a mental exercise, a kind of psychological homework, rather than a creative act of transformation. Simply thinking about a new scene is not enough. Thought without feeling is like a seed without water. It has potential, but no power to grow. The subconscious mind is moved by feeling, not by thought alone. When you revise without feeling, you're essentially showing the subconscious a picture without telling it why it should care. It's like the difference between looking at a photograph of a delicious meal and actually tasting it. The photograph might be clear and detailed, but it doesn't nourish you. Similarly, a revised scene without feeling might be clear and detailed, but it doesn't transform you. You must feel the joy of the reconciliation, the satisfaction of the success, the peace of the resolution. Without these feelings, revision becomes an empty ritual, a performance without power. This passionless approach often stems from a kind of spiritual bypassing, where people try to transcend their emotions rather than transform them. They think that being spiritual means being detached, so they approach revision with a kind of cold, clinical detachment. But this misses the entire point. Revision is not about avoiding emotions. It's about consciously choosing which emotions you will cultivate. The feeling is the creative force. When Neville said you must feel the reality of the revised scene, he meant you must emotionally experience it as if it were a present fact, not just intellectually acknowledge it as a possibility. Now we come to the third and most insidious mistake, the one that defeats even those who avoid the first two errors, digging up the seed. This is the fatal flaw that was promised to be revealed, and it's so common that it probably accounts for the majority of revision failures. After successfully revising a memory, feeling it fully, experiencing the new version as real, people immediately begin checking to see if it worked. They dig through their consciousness looking for evidence of change. They test themselves by deliberately recalling the original memory to see if it still hurts. They anxiously monitor their external circumstances for signs of transformation. This checking is not innocent curiosity, it's doubt in action. When you check to see if revision worked, you're implying that it might not have worked, and this doubt resurrects the original memory with all its original force. It's like planting a seed and then digging it up every day to see if it's growing. The very act of checking destroys the growth process. Every time you deliberately recall the original memory to test if it still affects you, you're re-impressing your subconscious with that original version. You're literally undoing your own work, reversing the revision through the act of verification. The checking process often becomes obsessive. People revise at night, then spend the next day monitoring their thoughts and feelings for any trace of the old pattern. They become hypervigilant, which creates anxiety, which feels similar to the original negative emotion, which they interpret as proof that the revision didn't work, which leads them to either give up or try to revise again from a state of frustration. This creates a vicious cycle where the very effort to ensure success ensures failure. The seed of the new memory needs darkness and time to germinate. Constant examination exposes it to the harsh light of doubt and prevents it from taking root. The proper approach after revision is what Neville called the Sabbath, a complete rest from the work. Once you've revised, you must assume it is done and move on with your life. Don't look for proof. Don't check for results. Don't test the old memory. Simply go about your business with the quiet confidence that the work has been accomplished. If the old memory surfaces naturally, which it might, especially in the beginning, don't panic or assume failure. Simply and gently redirect to the revised version without making a big deal about it. Think of it like training a pet. Gentle, consistent redirection without drama or force. This mistake of checking is particularly problematic because it seems so reasonable. After all, don't you want to know if the technique is working? Isn't it natural to be curious about results? But this reasonable-seeming behavior is actually based on a misunderstanding of how consciousness operates. Changes in consciousness don't always manifest immediately or obviously. Sometimes the transformation happens gradually, so subtly that you don't notice until one day you realize the old memory has lost all its charge. Sometimes the change happens in your external world, before you even notice it in your internal world. By constantly checking, you interfere with these natural unfoldment processes. Another variation of the digging up the seed mistake is talking about it too soon or too much. People successfully revise a memory, then immediately want to share their experience, to tell others about the technique, to describe their revised scene in detail. While sharing can be valuable in the right context, premature or excessive talking about your revision disperses its energy. It's like opening the oven door repeatedly while baking. You let out the heat necessary for transformation. Keep your revisions private, at least initially, allowing them to solidify in your consciousness before exposing them to the opinions and doubts of others. The fourth mistake, while not as fatal as the first three, still significantly diminishes the power of revision, limiting the scope of what you're willing to revise. Many people will revise small, recent events, but refuse to touch significant past traumas, believing them to be too real or too important to revise. They create a hierarchy of memories, with some deemed revisable and others marked as permanent fixtures of their history. This selective approach undermines the entire principle of revision, which is that all memories exist only in consciousness, and therefore all memories can be transformed. Now let us explore the advanced nuances that transform revision from a simple technique into a master key for consciousness. Neville's greatest gift was showing us that revision is not limited to the day's events or recent memories. It can reach back across decades to heal the deepest wounds of your past. That childhood trauma that has shaped your entire life, that devastating betrayal from years ago, that failure that defined your self-concept, all of these can be revised with the same authority you would use to revise this morning's conversation. Time in consciousness is not a barrier, but an illusion. A memory from 30 years ago exists in the same space as a memory from 3 minutes ago, your present imagination. When revising ancient wounds, the approach must be even more gentle and patient. These memories have been reinforced thousands of times, creating deep grooves in consciousness. You don't attack them with aggressive revision. You approach them with the tenderness of a parent comforting a child. Often, these deep memories need to be revised in layers, starting with the emotional charge before moving to the actual events. First, you might simply revise the feeling of the memory, imagining yourself in that past moment, but feeling safe, loved, and powerful instead of afraid, abandoned, or helpless. Once the emotional charge has been neutralized, you can then revise the actual events if desired. The power of revising deep trauma lies not in denying what happened, but in reclaiming your authority over its meaning and influence. That traumatic event may have happened to the child you were, but the meaning of that event is determined by the adult you are now. Through revision, you can give your younger self the resources, understanding, and support they needed but didn't have. You can imagine yourself as you are now with all your wisdom and strength, entering that past scene and providing what was missing. This isn't about pretending the trauma didn't happen. It's about healing it at the level of consciousness where it continues to live. Here's a profound secret. When you revise your own past, you often find that the people involved in those memories begin to behave differently toward you in the present. This seems impossible from a conventional understanding of time and causation, but it's perfectly logical from the perspective of consciousness. The person who hurt you in the past exists in your consciousness as a particular pattern of memory and expectation. When you revise that pattern, you change the energetic template through which you relate to them. They feel this shift, usually unconsciously, and respond to the new pattern you're holding. Many people report that after revising memories of conflict with family members, those relationships spontaneously improve without any external intervention. This leads us to one of Neville's most powerful and compassionate teachings, revising for others. You can take someone else's burden, their failure, their suffering, and revise it in your own consciousness. This is not about controlling others or violating their free will. It's about changing how they exist in your consciousness, which is the only place they exist for you anyway. When you revise someone else's experience, imagining them successful instead of failing, healthy instead of sick, happy instead of suffering, you're not just being kind, you're actively participating in their transformation through the creative power of your imagination. The technique for revising for others requires a particular state of consciousness, one of complete impersonality. You're not revising from your personal desire for them to change. You're revising from the impersonal desire for their highest good. Imagine them as they would be at their best, living their highest potential, free from whatever limitation they're experiencing. See them clearly in this elevated state, feel the reality of it, then release it completely. You're not trying to force a change, you're offering a new pattern in consciousness, which they're free to accept or reject at the level of their own consciousness. This practice of revising for others has profound effects on relationships. When you consistently revise your interactions with difficult people, imagining them responding with kindness, understanding, and respect, you create a new template for those relationships. You're not manipulating them. You're changing the consciousness you bring to the relationship, and relationships always reflect the consciousness of the participants. The person who seemed impossible to deal with begins to soften, not because you've controlled them, but because you've changed the energetic dynamic between you. Another advanced application is what might be called preventive revision, revising future events before they happen. This might seem paradoxical, but remember that future events exist in consciousness as expectations and assumptions based on past patterns. When you revise these patterns, you change the trajectory of future events. For instance, if you have an important meeting tomorrow and you're anxious because similar meetings have gone poorly in the past, you can revise those past meetings tonight. By changing the historical pattern in consciousness, you change the expectation pattern for tomorrow, which changes the probability field of what will occur. The master practitioner of revision understands that this technique is not just about changing specific memories, but about changing the entire narrative structure of your life. Your life story is not a collection of isolated events, but a coherent narrative with themes, patterns, and meaning. Through systematic revision, you can literally rewrite your life story, changing not just individual scenes, but the entire arc of your narrative. The person who sees themselves as a victim can revise their story to become the hero. The person whose narrative is about struggle can revise it to be about flow and ease. This narrative revision requires a higher perspective, the ability to see your life as a whole rather than as fragments. You identify the recurring patterns, the repeating themes, the consistent threads that run through your experience. Then, systematically, you begin revising key memories that establish these patterns. It's like a novelist going through their manuscript and changing crucial plot points that affect the entire story. Each revised memory creates a ripple effect, changing the meaning and influence of related memories, gradually transforming your entire sense of self and possibility. There's also the practice of what could be called generational revision, healing family patterns that have been passed down through generations. You can revise not just your own memories, but your memories of your parents' and grandparents' experiences. These ancestral memories live in you as inherited patterns of consciousness, influencing your life in ways you might not even recognize. By revising these inherited memories, imagining your ancestors free from the limitations that bound them, you free yourself from patterns that may have been repeating for generations. The ultimate mastery of revision comes when you realize that you can revise not just specific memories, but your entire relationship with memory itself. You can revise yourself from being someone who is haunted by the past to someone who is empowered by it. You can revise your fundamental assumption about whether the past determines the present or whether the present determines the meaning of the past. This meta-revision, this revision of revision itself, is the final liberation from the tyranny of time. The bridge between Neville Goddard's mystical insights and modern neuroscience reveals a stunning convergence of ancient wisdom and contemporary discovery. What science now calls neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself throughout life, provides a biological foundation for what Neville taught through spiritual revelation. Every time you recall a memory, you're not accessing a fixed recording but actively reconstructing that memory through neural firing patterns. This process, called memory reconsolidation, means that memories are vulnerable to change each time they're activated. When you vividly imagine a revised version of an event, while the original memory is active, you're literally engaging in a process of rewiring the neural pathways associated with that memory. The neuroscience becomes even more fascinating when we understand that the brain cannot distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. Functional MRI studies have shown that when people imagine performing an action, the same brain regions activate as when they actually perform that action. When you revise a memory with sufficient sensory detail and emotional intensity, your brain processes it as if it were a real experience, creating new neural pathways that compete with and can eventually override the original memory traces. This isn't just psychological, it's physiological. You're not just changing your mind, you're changing your brain. The emotional component of revision finds its scientific parallel in the discovery that memories are encoded and consolidated through emotional arousal. The amygdala, your brain's alarm system, tags emotionally significant experiences for long-term storage. This is why traumatic memories are so persistent. They're deeply encoded through intense emotion, but this same mechanism can be used for healing. When you revise a memory with positive emotion, you're using the same encoding system that created the original traumatic imprint. The new positive emotional tag can overwrite the old negative one, fundamentally changing how that memory is stored and accessed in your brain. Consider the phenomenon of state-dependent learning, where memories are most easily accessed when you're in the same state in which they were encoded. This explains why Neville emphasized the importance of reaching a specific state of consciousness for revision. When you enter a relaxed, receptive state similar to sleep, you're accessing the same brainwave patterns, theta waves, that are dominant during memory consolidation. In this state, memories become more malleable, more susceptible to modification. You're not fighting against the brain's natural processes, you're working with them, using the brain's own mechanisms for memory formation to reform existing memories. The default mode network of the brain, active during rest and introspection, is where we construct our sense of self through autobiographical memory. This network is constantly creating and recreating your life story, pulling from memories to construct your ongoing narrative of who you are. When you revise memories, you're directly influencing this network's source material. The revised memories become part of the database from which your brain constructs your sense of self. This is why people often report that after consistent revision practice, they don't just feel different about the past. They feel like a different person entirely. The scientific concept of cognitive reappraisal, studied extensively in emotion regulation research, provides another bridge to revision. Cognitive reappraisal involves changing how you think about an event to change how you feel about it. But revision goes beyond mere reappraisal. It doesn't just change the interpretation of an event, it changes the remembered event itself. This is more aligned with what researchers are now calling memory updating, where new information is integrated into existing memories during reconsolidation, fundamentally altering the memory trace rather than just adding a new layer of interpretation. The placebo effect, often dismissed as just psychological, actually demonstrates the profound power of belief and expectation to create physiological changes. When someone believes they've taken a powerful medication, their brain produces corresponding neurochemical changes. Similarly, when you fully believe in your revised memory, your brain produces the neurochemical and physiological responses appropriate to that new version of the past. The revised memory becomes somatically real, encoded not just in your thoughts but in your body's stress response system, your hormone levels, your immune function. Epigenetics adds another layer of scientific validation to revision. We now know that traumatic experiences can alter gene expression in ways that affect not just the individual, but potentially their offspring. These epigenetic marks influence how genes are read and expressed, affecting everything from stress response to disease susceptibility. While research is still emerging, there's growing evidence that positive psychological interventions can reverse some of these epigenetic changes. When you revise traumatic memories, you're potentially not just changing your psychology, but your biology at the most fundamental level. The discovery of mirror neurons provides insight into why revising memories of interpersonal events can change current relationships. Mirror neurons fire both when we perform an action and when we observe others performing that action, creating a neural basis for empathy and social connection. When you revise a memory of interaction with another person, you're changing the mirror neuron patterns associated with that person. This altered neural pattern influences how you unconsciously respond to them in present interactions, which in turn influences how they respond to you, creating a new relational dynamic. The quantum physics perspective, while more speculative, offers intriguing parallels. The observer effect in quantum mechanics shows that the act of observation influences what is observed. Similarly, the act of remembering influences the memory itself. Some theorists propose that consciousness operates at a quantum level, where multiple possibilities exist simultaneously until consciousness collapses them into a specific reality. From this perspective, revision could be seen as choosing which possibility from the past to collapse into your experienced reality. The concept of morphic resonance, proposed by biologist Rupert Sheldrake, suggests that memory is not stored in the brain, but in a kind of field that transcends space and time. While controversial, this theory would explain how revising a memory could have effects that seem to transcend normal causation, such as other people suddenly behaving differently after you've revised memories involving them. Whether or not morphic fields exist, the phenomenon of changed relationships after revision is widely reported and deserves scientific investigation. The study of spontaneous remission in medical contexts provides another parallel. Cases where serious illnesses suddenly and inexplicably disappear often involve a profound shift in the patient's consciousness, including how they remember and relate to their past. While not all spontaneous remissions can be attributed to psychological factors, the correlation between consciousness change and physical healing is too consistent to ignore. Revision, by fundamentally altering the consciousness patterns rooted in past experience, may trigger similar healing responses. The emerging field of psychedelic therapy has shown that substances like psilocybin and MDMA can make traumatic memories more malleable, allowing for therapeutic reprocessing. This chemically induced plasticity demonstrates that the brain has built-in mechanisms for memory revision that can be activated. Neville's technique of revision could be seen as a natural way to access these same mechanisms without external substances, using the power of imagination to induce the neuroplasticity necessary for memory transformation. Recent research on meditation and mindfulness has shown that these practices can literally change brain structure, increasing gray matter in areas associated with emotional regulation and decreasing it in areas associated with stress and anxiety. Revision, as a form of directed meditation, likely produces similar structural changes. The regular practice of revision could be progressively rewiring your brain, creating new neural highways that bypass old trauma patterns and establish new, healthier patterns of thought and emotion. The science of sleep and dreams provides the final bridge. During REM sleep, the brain processes and consolidates memories, often recombining elements in novel ways. Dreams themselves could be seen as a natural form of revision, where the brain attempts to integrate and make sense of experiences. The practice of revision before sleep, which Neville recommended, may be hijacking this natural process, directing it towards specific healing outcomes rather than leaving it to random dream processing. Let me share with you one of Neville's most powerful demonstrations of revision, a story that challenges our conventional understanding of cause and effect. One of his students had received a letter of rejection from a company where she desperately wanted to work. The letter was clear, definitive. The position had been filled by someone else. Most would accept this as final, but this student had been learning the art of revision. That night, instead of accepting the rejection, she revised receiving the letter. In her imagination, she opened the same envelope, but inside was a letter of acceptance, congratulating her on getting the position and welcoming her to the company. She didn't just imagine a different letter. She felt the joy of acceptance, the relief of success, the excitement of new beginning. She made it so real in her imagination that the feeling of rejection completely dissolved, replaced by the feeling of achievement. She went to sleep in this revised state, holding the feeling of having been accepted. 3 days later, she received a phone call from the company. There had been an administrative error, they said. The rejection letter had been sent by mistake. She had actually been their first choice all along. And could she start on Monday? Was this coincidence, synchronicity, or evidence that consciousness transcends our normal understanding of time and causation? The skeptic will choose coincidence, but the practitioner of revision accumulates too many such coincidences to maintain skepticism. The revised memory seemed to reach backward in time to change the original decision, or forward in time to create the correction, or perhaps sideways through consciousness to shift into a parallel reality where she had always been accepted. The mechanism matters less than the result. By revising the memory of rejection, she experienced the reality of acceptance. Consider a more contemporary example, one that demonstrates how revision can heal long-standing patterns. A man in his 40s had struggled with public speaking his entire adult life, traced back to a humiliating experience in high school where he forgot his lines in a school play and was laughed off stage. This memory had become a defining moment, creating a pattern of avoidance that limited his career and social life. Every time he needed to speak publicly, that teenage humiliation would resurface, flooding him with the same shame and fear. He began practicing revision on that high school memory. Night after night, he would reimagine the scene. Instead of forgetting his lines, he saw himself delivering them perfectly. Instead of laughter, he heard applause. Instead of running off stage, he took a confident bow. But more importantly, he revised his internal state in that moment. Instead of feeling humiliated, he felt proud. Instead of feeling exposed, he felt powerful. He didn't try to forget the original memory. He simply created a more powerful alternative that his consciousness could choose to reference. After 2 weeks of consistent revision, something shifted. The next time he had to speak at a work meeting, the usual anxiety began to arise, but then something different happened. Instead of the humiliation memory surfacing, the revised version appeared. He found himself standing to speak with an unexpected confidence, as if he had always been comfortable with public speaking. His colleagues noticed the change immediately. Within 6 months, he was volunteering for presentations, even seeking out speaking opportunities. The revised memory had become the new foundation for his relationship with public speaking. Here's another case that demonstrates the power of revising for others. A woman had been estranged from her sister for 5 years, following a bitter argument about their mother's estate. The resentment ran deep on both sides, with neither willing to make the first move toward reconciliation. The woman began to revise not just the original argument, but their entire relationship history. Every night she would imagine conversations with her sister filled with love, understanding, and mutual respect. She revised the estate argument into a calm discussion where both sisters supported each other through their grief. She didn't contact her sister or take any external action. She simply held these revised memories consistently, feeling the warmth of sisterly love each night before sleep. After 3 weeks, her phone rang. It was her sister, calling to apologize, saying she had been thinking about their relationship and couldn't bear the estrangement any longer. They met for coffee, and the conversation unfolded almost exactly as she had been revising it, with understanding, forgiveness, and renewed affection. The sister mentioned that she had been having dreams about their childhood, happy memories she hadn't thought about in years. A particularly striking example involves a man who revised a memory of his father, who had died 10 years earlier. Their relationship had been difficult, marked by criticism and emotional distance. The man carried deep wounds from never receiving his father's approval or affection. He began to revise key memories from his childhood, imagining his father as warm, supportive, and proud of him. He created elaborate revised scenes of playing catch with his father, of his father attending his school events with enthusiasm, of heart-to-heart conversations that never happened. The extraordinary part came when he visited his mother a month later. She pulled out a box of his father's things she had just discovered in the attic, things she had never seen before. Inside were letters his father had written but never sent, expressing pride in his son, regret for his emotional distance, and deep love he had never been able to express. There were photographs of his son's achievements that his father had secretly collected. It was as if the revised memories had somehow revealed a hidden truth, or perhaps created a bridge to a version of the past that had always existed in potential. We have arrived at the summit of understanding, where all the threads of wisdom weave together into a single luminous truth. Revision is not merely a technique for changing memories, it is the ultimate act of self-love and personal responsibility. When you take up the tool of revision, you declare to the universe and to yourself that you are not a victim of your history, but the sovereign author of your story. Every act of revision is an act of radical self-compassion, acknowledging that you deserve a past that empowers, rather than diminishes you, a foundation of memories that support your highest becoming, rather than chain you to old limitations. This is the synthesis of power, understanding that your consciousness is not trapped in the amber of time, but free to move through all dimensions of experience, reshaping reality from the inside out. The past, present, and future are not separate countries with closed borders, but provinces of the single nation of consciousness, and you hold citizenship in all three. Through revision, you exercise your divine right to edit any part of your story, knowing that changes in one chapter ripple through all the others, creating new plot possibilities that were previously unimaginable. The master key you now possess opens doors that most people don't even know exist. While others remain prisoners in cells built from old pain, you can walk through the walls because you understand that the walls are made of consciousness, and consciousness is yours to command. This is not about denying reality. It's about recognizing that reality is far more fluid than you were taught, far more responsive to the creative power of imagination than the material world would have you believe. Consider the profound implications of what you've learned. Every relationship that seems broken can be healed in consciousness. Every failure that seems final can be transformed into a foundation for success. Every trauma that seems to define you can be revised into a source of strength. You are not limited by what happened to you. You are limited only by what you continue to create through the act of remembering. And now you know that remembering is not a passive retrieval, but an active creation, always subject to your conscious direction. The power of revision extends beyond personal healing into the realm of collective transformation. As you revise your own memories, you contribute to the revision of the collective human story. Each person who heals their past through conscious revision removes one thread of pain from the tapestry of human consciousness, replacing it with a thread of light. Imagine what becomes possible when millions practice this art, each revising their corner of the collective past, gradually transforming the entire human narrative from one of suffering to one of awakening. You stand now at a threshold, holding in your hands a tool that mystics have guarded for millennia, a secret that can literally reshape the substance of your experienced reality. Your past is not your master. It is clay in your hands, waiting to be reformed by the sculptor's touch of your imagination. Every painful memory that you've been carrying like a stone in your heart can be transformed into a stepping stone toward your highest potential. Stop carrying the weight of yesterday's mistakes, yesterday's failures, yesterday's wounds. They have no power except what you give them through the act of remembering, and now you know how to remember differently. The message of empowerment that rings through Neville's teaching is this: you are not the victim of your story, you are its divine author. Every chapter that has been written can be revised. Every character who played a villain can be transformed into a teacher. Every tragedy can be rewritten as a triumph. This is not delusion or denial. This is the highest expression of human creative power, the ability to transform suffering into wisdom, limitation into liberation, the past into a servant of your chosen future. Think of what this means for your life starting today. That relationship you thought was irreparably damaged, you can begin revising it tonight. That failure that has defined your self-concept, you can start rewriting it this evening. That childhood wound that has influenced every adult relationship, you can begin healing it through the power of conscious revision. You don't need anyone else's permission or participation. You don't need to wait for apologies that may never come. You have everything you need within the infinite creative power of your own imagination, but this power comes with a sacred responsibility. You are not just revising for yourself, but for everyone whose life touches yours. When you heal your past, you heal part of the collective past. When you transform a memory of conflict into one of peace, you add peace to the collective consciousness. When you revise failure into success, you make success more possible for others. This is not metaphorical. This is the actual mechanism by which consciousness evolves. One revised memory at a time, one healed heart at a time, one transformed life at a time. The beauty of revision is that it requires no special talent, no years of training, no external validation. Whether you're a CEO or a student, a parent or a child, whether you're 20 or 80, you have the same access to this power. Your imagination is as powerful as anyone's, your consciousness is creative. The only difference between those who transform their lives through revision and those who remain trapped in old patterns is the willingness to practice, to persist, to believe in the creative power of imagination, even when the external world seems to contradict it. Take up the artist's tool of revision and reshape your history into a foundation for the magnificent future you desire. Stop accepting the story that was written by your younger, less conscious self. Stop living in chapters written by pain, fear, and limitation. You are the author, and you can revise any page, any paragraph, any sentence. The pen is in your hand, the pages are before you, and the story of your life is waiting to be transformed into the masterpiece it was always meant to be. Remember, you are not changing the past to escape from truth, but to align with a higher truth, the truth of your infinite potential, your divine nature, your creative power. The events of your past were just first drafts, rough sketches of a story still being written. Through revision, you're not destroying those drafts. You're refining them, elevating them, transforming them into art. You're taking the raw material of experience and consciously crafting it into a narrative that serves your highest good, and the highest good of all. Here is your challenge, should you choose to accept this invitation to transformation. For the next 7 nights, commit to the practice of revision with the dedication of a master craftsman learning their art. Each night before sleep, revise one small, undesirable event from your day. Start small. A tense conversation, a moment of self-doubt, a minor mistake. Don't attempt to revise your entire life history in the first week. Master the technique with simple revisions before attempting to heal deeper wounds. This is your laboratory for learning the art of conscious creation. Document your experience, not for anyone else, but for yourself. Notice how you feel immediately after revising. Notice any changes in your dreams. Notice if the people involved in your revised memories behave differently toward you. Notice if similar situations that usually trigger old patterns unfold differently. You're not looking for dramatic miracles, though they may occur. You're looking for the subtle shifts that indicate your consciousness is responding to your new creative direction. After 7 days, you will have begun to develop the mental muscle of revision, the confidence that comes from direct experience of its power. But here's the deeper challenge. Can you maintain the revised version when the old memory tries to reassert itself? Can you be gentle but firm with your own consciousness, like a loving parent redirecting a child? Can you resist the temptation to dig up the seed to see if it's growing? This is where most people fail, not in the initial revision, but in maintaining the new version against the momentum of old mental habits. Your 7-day challenge is not just to revise, but to become the guardian of your revisions, protecting them from the doubt and impatience that would erode their power. If you are ready to become the master of your past and the architect of your future, subscribe to the Master's Legacy and press the bell icon. What we have planned next will change not just how you see the future, but how you create it. We'll be exploring Neville's technique of living from the end, the art of assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and the power of imagination to collapse time and bring future realities into present experience. Each teaching builds upon the last, creating a complete system for conscious creation that has transformed countless lives. Come back and share your experience in the comments. Tell us what you revised and what shifted. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to believe in their own power to transform. Remember, we're not just individuals practicing these techniques in isolation. We're a community of conscious creators supporting each other in the greatest adventure possible. The adventure of discovering and exercising our divine creative power. Every testimony of success adds to the field of possibility for others. The path of the masters is not for those who seek easy comfort in accepting limitation. It's for those brave enough to question the very nature of reality, bold enough to experiment with consciousness, and persistent enough to practice until the miraculous becomes natural. You've been given the key. The door stands before you. On the other side is a life where you are no longer haunted by the past but empowered by it, where every memory serves your highest good, where you are truly the author of your own story. The only question that remains is, will you walk through?